I'm pretty confident that I will never lose my edge in the market. And the reason for that, I'm going to explain in this video, but it will give you an idea as to where you can get your edge in the market as well. If you're interested in learning more about BetAngel, its tools and the opportunities they present, then why not visit betangel.com today and download a free trial. So yeah, it's a bit of a bold statement saying that you'll never lose your edge, but I truly believe it. Why? Well, if you look at the market overall, you're obviously going to have to find a strategy and a niche to operate within that market. And generally you find that the market is pretty efficient. But the interesting thing is, and this is my first point here, is that when you look at that efficiency, a lot of people see that as a negative because they sort of say, well, the market's efficient, you can't make any money. However, and it's when I'm in here, I do a great explanation of why that's totally wrong. We'll park that for the moment. But you can look at it in two ways. You can sort of say, well, the market's efficient, therefore I can't make any money. Or you can say the market's efficient and therefore I'm not really going to lose much in the long term, which is the angle that I take. When I've explored certain sports and certain strategies, I know that my loss is capped. I know that there's no way I'm going to lose beyond a certain amount because the market auto-corrects. The market is generally efficient over time for one reason or another. And that's really sort of off the back of the whole gamut of players within the market. If you go into financial markets, you've got long-term investors that are looking on a horizon of 5 to 10 years or something, and they're making a judgment based upon value. So they can participate in the market and buy and sell just as much as a high-frequency trader who's trying to work in microseconds and grab a few cents here repeatedly over hundreds of millions of transactions. They both work within the market. That's why the market's efficient. Little edges in the market appear all over the place. But also, think about it, there's a strategy I've been running since almost the day I arrived in the market that I still run now. So I'm creating some of that efficiency by being in the market and deciding to put my orders in a certain place at a certain time. The market efficiency actually isn't a negative. It's a positive because it caps your potential losses. I've got a great spreadsheet of an experiment I've done where I trade at random and pretty much don't lose a penny. And it shows you that in fact the line to get positive is actually really thin. There's a tiny slither between you being unprofitable and profitable. So you realize that in fact your edge, or a big part of your edge in the market, is just to be a little bit better than everybody else. And I actually think that that is really easy. Why do I think that that's easy? Well, I've gone off on this journey to understand market participants as well as the pricing of the market and how the market moves and so on and so forth. But you realize actually a big function in any market is the people on the other side. And when you look at that, it's easy to understand because when I first started doing this, you imagine people would be a bit negative because they didn't understand it. Well, many, many years later on now, and you would have thought that people would sort of go, oh, actually, I can see how it can be done. And there are all these people doing it. But no, that would be far too simple. You still get people being very negative. And the fact is that, negative people will always be negative because they don't want to find solutions because that means they just have to find another negative from it. And it's just a spiral. But in fact, the human mind is wound up with a little bit of negativity, especially when it comes to money and efficiency and risk and so on and so forth. Look up prospect theory, read up on prospect theory. Very interesting, and it will tell you that in fact most people have difficulty making correct decisions when under stress. But typically, and this is more prevalent when you're talking about financial decisions. People tend to put too much emphasis on loss and not enough on the opportunity. But the fact is, if you search for opportunity, you will find it. If you search for losses, you will find those as well. So, which would you prefer? Would you prefer to be negative and draw the negative out of a situation, or out of a person, or out of a trade? Or would you look for the positive and try and find the positive for it? And this is a process that I've had to endure and go through over many years. Because I started off as very cautious and a bit negative on things when I first started trading, and this was trading in financials before I traded Betfair. And I had to overcome that and gradually move over to the other side where I started looking for opportunities rather than looking for problems. And you sort of, back then I imagined when I first started that people would be a bit negative. But I didn't expect to see it much later on in my career, because I've done it in great depth, I've documented carefully, I've come up with beautiful equations and descriptions of how the market works and endless spreadsheets and all of these things. So, you know, it's definitively there. All of that information and what I say comes from all of that information. But still people have a go. Sometimes success for people is taking a bite out of yours, is what I've learned. But the most important thing that I've learned from that experience and getting that grief is that that tells you exactly where part of your edge is in the market. If you've done it for many years, you've done it to great ability, and you've really worked hard at all of that. And, you know, I've sacrificed the best years of my working life to do this job, and I love it. I would do it even if I didn't earn any money from it. When you've done all of that and people still try and call you into question, you sort of think, you just don't get it. You don't actually understand. You just you can't see it, can you? You're unable to see it. And you suddenly realise that that is probably the majority of the market, to be honest. A lot of people just can't see it. Or maybe they can see it, but they can't do it. And therefore they default to this mode where they're sort of saying, well, actually, no, it's not true, because I tried it and it didn't work. Now, in any market, you're going to get winners and losers. But, you know, you could have straight backers, straight layers, people trading very short term, slightly longer term, whole gamut of strategies in the market. And of course, you know, the market itself is that big ball of wibbly wobbly stuff. And as a consequence, you know, it's inevitable that you will have losers. I'm not saying to you that everybody will win or it's suitable for everybody. And in fact, if you contact my team and you come up with a line of how much can I earn, you know, 5 weeks into my journey, you know, they're all briefed to go out with the same message saying it may not be suitable for you. You may not be able to do this. Do you have enough money to lose? You're probably going to struggle to start with. Blah, 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 blah. We've deliberately shied away from trying to position it as anything other than an opportunity that you may or may not like, that you may or may not be able to be good at. But necessarily, you know, it is an opportunity. And when you talk about opportunity, I mean, opportunities, positive people find opportunity, negative people find problems, is what's happened. You know, over the years, I've learned that, I've figured that out, I've managed to work it out. And it happens in a number of ways. When I first started doing this, I approached a whole number of people, but got none of their support. People just wrote it off and said that there was, you know, what are you doing? But one person did respond positively. We started collaborating together, and he's been with me ever since, and he's done incredibly well. And I've also seen loads of Bet Angel users do incredibly well, and loads of non-Bet Angel users do incredibly well. There are loads of people that do well, and they all have their little niches. They're good at some sports and not at others. So, you know, there are plenty of people that are good at me at certain sports, much better than I am. And I'm happy to credit them with that. I don't believe that they can't do it because I'm not doing it. You know, I look at them and I think, I wonder what they're doing. And I'm sure they do the same to me as well. But there's a happy little camp of people running around with that mindset, looking for opportunities, trying to figure out where they need to be and what they can do and how they can take that forward. But that seems to be in the minority, and that's why I say that I think I'm going to keep my edge forever, because it seems to be human nature. It doesn't matter what you do or how well you do it or how far you go to prove that you've done it. People just cannot come to terms with it. And you realise that that's just the way the world works. You can't. There's no point in trying to discuss and convert these people because it's impossible. They have their mind made up, and that's it. And there's nothing you can do to change it. So, you know, you just realise, in fact, that they're missing the opportunity. They can't see the opportunity, or they can't reconcile internally exactly what's going on. But opportunity pops up from all over the place, and for random reasons. And, you know, I'll give you a great example here. It's a long and winding path to this particular point, which is littered with seeking positive opportunities. But in 2004, I was in Omaha, Nebraska for the Berkshire Hathaway AGM. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. It was cold, and I think it was probably dark at 6. But I was trying to catch a cab, and they were sparse that weekend. And suddenly I see one, so I go for it. And at the same time, 2 other guys go for it. And, you know, I grabbed hold of the handle and I looked at them, and at that precise moment, everything that I've just talked about in this video, you know, whoop, comes to focus. And I could have gone, this is my cab and I'm taking it. But I didn't. What I actually did was I looked at them and I just said, do you want to share? And they looked at me and reciprocated, and they said, well, okay, where are you going? I said, well, let's just get in the cab and we'll sort it out. We'll figure out how this is going to work. And we did. We jumped in the cab and we started to have a discussion. And those are two of my best friends now. And they're both hedge fund managers now. They've started their own funds, which, you know, I've been interacting with them for a length of time on. And that's taken me off on a path that I could never have imagined. All the things that have happened with them, all the things we've done together, the people I've met through them, and so on and so forth, completely life-changing. And when you look back at that, it came down to that precise moment when I had to make a decision about, do I act negatively or do I just say, yeah, let's go for it? And what's happened to me over the years is when I was younger, I was a bit defensive and negative, and I wouldn't do things if I thought there was risk. But the fact is, risk exists everywhere. You cannot avoid it. But what you can do is you can look at a situation and go, yeah, let's do that. And, you know, some of them work out, some of them don't. But by and large, when you get those situations that work out, they can go exponential. And the fact is, if you're not looking for opportunities or you're not questioning yourself, yeah, and it needs a sense of humility, because sometimes you're going to be wrong. And you can't be right all of the time. But nonetheless, if you're looking in that direction and you're saying, well, you know, let's give it a try, then what you tend to find out is there's a few things that don't work which you discard. But when you do find opportunities, they tend to be pretty huge and, you know, far-reaching as well. So I tend to carry this positive attitude with me in everything that I do. I prefer to err on that side than err on the negative. And as a consequence, if I see somebody doing well, I give them a round of applause and wonder what they're doing. And but, you know, I think it takes a certain type of mindset, and not everybody is in that zone. And you actually find that, in fact, the human brain is not geared to that at all. And as a consequence, it's inevitable that the amount of people that think an alternate way and perhaps have this negative mindset, it may even be negative towards you, it's not their fault. But in fact, it beautifully describes where one of the edges in the market comes from. People are unable to come to terms with that. They can't see it. And therefore, after all these years, when I see people who just don't get it or don't understand, it makes me smile now. It used to frustrate me. But I'm over that now, and I just have this wry smile every time I see it, because I'm just sort of thinking, you don't understand. You can't see it, can you? You just cannot see it. And as a consequence, you know, and the wry smile comes around from knowing that that attitude needs to be prevalent in the market, because that is actually where part of the edge comes from. The barrier between a profit and a loss in the long term is actually quite small, and all you're looking to do is to just skip over that barrier, even by a tiny percentage, and you will be able to make money. And in fact, that attitude, which is prevalent in the whole world, to be honest, allows you to do that. But the only way that you'll be able to do that is by looking for opportunities. And the best way to look for opportunities is to have that positive mindset. So anyway, bit of a ramble, but I hope that that's given you an idea of where that can lead you. If you're looking for an opportunity, if you're looking to take the whole thing forward, not just on trading, but perhaps in your life, in terms of what you want to achieve from your life, it's very, very beneficial to generally have a positive outlook, because the world very often doesn't work like that. The world is geared in a different way, and you can differentiate yourself from everybody else just by looking for those opportunities, because you will find them. So yeah, that's why I think I'm going to never lose my edge in the market, because the world is geared up in a different way to the way that I think. And I think I am always going to keep finding opportunities.